We're live, back with a bit of a raspy throat because I need to get more hydrated. Today, we're going to be back playing Immortal Empire. Sadly, as you can see by it being paused at the beginning, we still can't stream live battles, but this'll do for now. Hopefully everything's going well for you guys. And hopefully get some pretty good games. I played some Vampire Coast upon popular request, so we should be seeing at least a little bit of that. And we'll also be seeing just a ton of other factions. We also got some Lizardmen, lots of games versus Terran too, but this one's gonna be up against Samurai Warriors, Vampire Counts. Should be pretty exciting. One of the strongest factions in the patch that we have right now. Hopefully they get nerfed, because if not, they'll be an absolute menace. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Let's see, is there a way I can? Sorry, 1 second, just shifting my chat boxes around. You know what this will do for now. Yeah, that's right. I bought Lord Croak. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Yeah, Croak is a menace here on this patch. He will just annihilate. I think my volume's peaking a bit. There we go. Yeah, he should annihilate the vampire counts right now. He does have a bit of what is possibly a bug, where his abilities seem to trigger twice. We'll see if that ends up getting removed by the time we get our sort of the next patch going. And yeah, that's basically it. I've brought a ton of Saurus Warriors, and I've also brought a bunch of 300 gold skinks because they're great for capping. Krokgar has Shum's Burning Gaze. We won't be using that too much here, as really it doesn't have too many crazy targets. It's more meant for dragons, and this time around it's going to be mostly necromancers. But hello, I'll just do a quick pass of chat real quick. I see all of you guys messaging. It's awesome and also a bit sad that chat is starting to get too big for me to easily manage. But yeah, Hola Skinks. Temple Guard need a buff? Actually, Temple Guard are pretty good with the Rev Crystal. And I will be calling it the Rev Crystal, not the Revivification Crystal. Far too hard to say. But the Rev Crystal heals like 26% HP per cast. So on Temple Guard, you're getting like 200-ish. Actually, a bit more than 200 gold value. You're getting like 300 gold value off of it. It's insane. And by the way, as you can see here, we are loading up the Lord Croak Bomb. We do have a little bit of cavalry to keep them in place. And there we go, just like that, the cavalry's dead. Even if they fix the double explosion, it'll still take about half HP off cavalry though, which of course is absolutely amazing. Can you subverse Twitch Prime? So I looked at, also you can see my Rev Crystal over there, awesome heals. Yeah, sadly for the Twitch side of things, it appears that the contract says I cannot, if I become a partner on Twitch, I can't, I can't also stream to YouTube at the same time, which means basically becoming a partner on Twitch is out of the question now. But if you do want to support my channel, or at least the slight cost for restreaming, if you are on my Twitch and you scroll down a bit, there's a Patreon page if you want to support. Though sadly I won't be able to accept your Twitch Primes, but you know, feel free to give them to another content creator. You know, Lore Master of Sotek also streams a lot, so maybe send some love his way. Now, for the battle so far, you can see we are trading insanely up. About 2,300 gold. That's going to be very, very good for me. And Croak is really awesome because of his ability to clear chaff. You can see just a normal 7 gold bomb just deletes those zombies over there. And that actually allows us to start capturing against the rather insane capture weight of the vampire counts. So that's going to be helping out quite a bit. At Enticity, will they make it FPS and campaign map a bit more stable? I have no idea. I don't have access to the campaign map, but hopefully they do. Hopefully, one can wish. What's it? Someone on Twitch. Your name is purple, so I can't actually read it. But asking. Oh wait, no. You already asked that. My bad. But yeah, no. Croak is insane. Especially against sort of this chaff spam meta that you see with the vampire counts, because sort of a lot of the style that they go for is just a basically just hanging out on the point, and it takes so long to kill them that they will. Oh, jeez, that was fast. Yeah, they basically hang out on the point so long that you'll never actually be able to wipe them off, and they just hold it for the entire game, and it doesn't matter if they trade down. But yeah, anyways, the next games are gonna be really rapid fire. Just a general heads up. So that was the first win of the day. Samurai had conceded, and that's gonna be win number 1. Hopefully my splicing of these are a little bit less abrupt. It just instantly popped over, but you know, what can you do? Any Skaven today? I do have a Skaven replay, I think, so maybe I can boot that up. But yeah, this next game's gonna be the Norskins against Tzeentch now. Pretty interesting fight. Generally, Norska does pretty bad against accounts because of sniping. So Tzeentch is a little bit of a scary force. We're also up against Turin, the man himself. And I've also brought good old Pit of Shades. I think Pit of Shades is just one of the best spells in the game right now. Definitely a must pick. Unless you have like the lore of Nurgle or something. Jeffy Verified on Twitch asking, is this live or a replay? I'm live, this is a replay. Unfortunately, we can't cast live games just yet. Enticity, also on Twitch. How do the Game 3 factions hold up against other ones? From what I've found, the Game 3 factions are pretty strong. Pretty strong. It seems like they've, even though the rosters are quite small, the demons themselves are actually pretty well balanced. Maybe even a little bit stronger, as they do have much stronger elite infantry. But sort of the biggest thing is that their compositions are sort of much better suited for domination. The aggressive playstyles really helping them out and being pseudo-unbreakable with their undeadness. Also, you have summoned some chariots here. Chariots are a great option against Tzeentch, as they do have a lot of armor, and armor is sort of the bane of them. They'll have a very hard time shutting that down. Should have said I'm a replay and this is live. That would have been amazing, Optimus. Man, with our might combined, we'll have the best puns on stream ever. But yeah, sort of the theme of this build is basically just heavy armor. I've brought armored skin wolves, very armored Famir, and the only light armor thing is really just my marauders. I'm hoping to get sort of a sort of like a pseudo Khorne style going, where Tzeentch usually needs to bring flamers against Khorne, but it can be a little bit scary. It really depends on how well we can take out those Forsaken and spawn, but I have pretty high confidence that my Famir should trade up. Enticity, what is on YouTube, what is the plan for the upcoming tournament? I know Creative Assembly is giving access to the DLC lords, but what about units? I would sort of defer to chat on this one, as I obviously I don't want to be saying anything that isn't public, so whatever is public, that's what you guys know. Yeah, unfortunately I'm not the breaking news guy, although that would be amazing if I could do that. Pit of Shades, by the way, on pinks should be pretty good. Hopefully should kill them, though the exalted pinks are quite tanky. We'll see how much damage it actually does. Your build is so heavy metal you might summon Turin on accident. Amazing. Enticity, what are the changes to the Dread Saurian? I believe the Dread Saurian's more or less the same. And by the way, I should actually have a video involving a Shredder of Lestria coming out fairly soon. It's not actually about the Shredder of Lestria, but it does make an appearance, so that should be pretty fun. Should be coming out in about 2 days, assuming I get that video done in time. Can you tell us what I think about the Primal Instinct changes? Yeah, I think it makes Lizardmen bonkers. Primal Instinct's giving what? It gives 5%, yeah, for anyone who hasn't heard of it yet, it gives 5% physical resist, I think 10 melee attack, and like 15% charge bonus. And it doesn't actually rampage your units anymore, it just buffs them. So cavalry for Lizardmen could be huge now. But I haven't really played Lizardmen enough in Warhammer 2 to get a sort of a fine thought of these nuance changes. We'll see. As for the actual battle right now, you can see we are trading up, which is very nice. Wolfrick's taken a little bit of damage though, and there is still a unit of pinks alive, which has me a tiny bit worried. a couple of units of new spawn coming in. It's a little bit scary, but overall it's a pretty comfortable position for me here, especially with a lot of the Forsaken routing. We just have to deal with those spawn at this point. Yeah, no, it's certainly a buff. Yeah, I think the Cold One cavalry, it should also be fixed if they have Primal Instincts, though I haven't checked myself. Is this live? I'm not gonna make the pun now. It's been too soon, but over here we are live. The game itself, though, as you can see, not being currently played by me. Unfortunately, we still cannot show off the... we still can't show off everything just yet. Temple Guard have it from what I've seen too. Oh man, Temple Guard, yeah. With 5% physical resist. Pretty scary, though a lot of the demons do have magic damage nowadays. In fact, even Vampire counts, who I think will be meta. The Grave Guard got magic damage. Have no idea how that happens, but you know, what can you do? And also, by the way, you may have also noticed that the value trading is starting to go pretty well in the favor of Turin. And the reason for that, I suspect, is probably because I've sent Wulfric pretty far forwards into the battle. And that's gonna be pretty scary for him, as now he's sort of surrounded by pinks and blues. If he does go down, that would be pretty devastating here. You also notice I didn't take the boat ability, and that's simply because it is a little bit broken right now. It's a bit too strong, and very likely it's gonna get nerfed. But yeah, actually, Turin actually clawing back in this battle quite well right now. He's going to be dealing tons of damage on Wulfric, and he's even managed to rout off my Skinwolves and Fimir. Despite the fact that the Skinwolves do have increased regeneration on this in Warhammer 3, as it was more or less doubled, because Tzeentch is sort of so full of fire damage, they really don't benefit from that too much, and it seems like they're trading pretty down. In fact, now we're actually on track to lose the point, and it's gonna be a little bit scary. You know, maybe I just wanted more Fimir just to deal with these spawn, because they are a menace right now. They're reducing my armor, and Wulfric, actually, with that one overextension, is getting annihilated. The Exalted Pinks, you'll notice, are still doing a lot of damage, and that's because the Pit of Shades didn't really kill too many of their models. And now it's going to be a mass rout. Wulfric's actually dead now, and I dare say this does look pretty bad for me. But perhaps we can pull it up. Or yeah, try and scrape a victory by. The plan, essentially, since I do have regeneration on my army, I suspect that I'm not as far behind as I might suspect, although he does have a lot of units there in the back. They are all quite beat up. So the hope is that I might be able to summon in some Skinwolves and use them to sort of clean up the rest of the forces. But I do need a lot of funds to do that, so we'll see how it goes. As for the actual victory tickets, you'll notice that I do not have enough tickets to actually... Yeah, this is up against Turin. You'll notice I don't have enough tickets to actually win off a single capture, so I do have to somehow dislodge the center point. Let's see if we can actually do it. How much have you played with the High Elf Dragons? A teensy tiny little bit, but yes, they have been buffed, which is quite exciting. Yeah, Vampire counts are pretty OP right now, so except for them, who do I think is the strongest? Probably Slaanesh or Lizardmen. I think on this build, Lizardmen, but if they do get access to the new DLC units, if Slaanesh gets chosen, it's over, man. There's no way anybody's going to be winning against Slaanesh if they get chosen. Has anyone tried out Bone Giants yet? Yes, Turin actually. I do have a set of replays that I might go over after this. So that should be quite exciting. Yeah, we can sort of take a look at that maybe after I'm done this set of games. But yeah, at this point it's looking pretty bleak, ain't it? I think the Lord there for Tzeentch, he has pretty great sniping powers, and honestly, my chariots didn't really do too well. Honestly, the Skinwolves didn't do too well either, but I do feel like Norska does have a pretty good shot with those Fimir. It seemed like they were pretty strong. They sort of gave me a lot of value early on, but because I was just summoning cost-inefficient units the entire game, eventually Turin managed to catch up. But who knows? Maybe the Rogue 6 Fimir build is going to be okay. You think Slanesh is indeed getting chosen? Well, yeah, Slanesh is going to dominate then. Or even worse, right? Imagine if, like, because Chaos has a Nurgle Sorcerer Lord. That's what they said that they got. So if Chaos is getting healing, and Chaos can take marked units, that means it can stack Tzeentch Forsaken, or no, Tzeentch Spawn for the minus 30 armor debuff, along with Slanesh Spawn for minus 5 melee stats on both ends, and then heal them with Nurgle's magic. That's just going to be insane. There's no way that's not insane. But there you go, Turin. Scraping out a victory against us. That's going to be our first loss of today. We're 1-1. Next up's going to be Bretonia. Bretonia? Am I saying that wrong? That sounds really weird to me. Anyways, Bretonia against his Kislev. And this is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. It's human on human action. I shouldn't say it like that. There's a Fey Enchantress and 2 Paladins, along with a heavy cavalry build with a good amount of chaff. Now, interesting thing about this patch. Chaff has been nerfed because all expendable units cap about 25% slower than their normal unit counterparts. They'll cap about as fast as a hero or lord, and that's going to be pretty scary, as it'll be much harder to steal points here. Though, of course, if I can manage to just win up on trades, I should be able to push a nice mobility advantage to win the game. Of course, Turin, he has his chariots, or his sleds, which are quite scary, and also a pretty vicious gun line. Streltsy are very scary against my cavalry, so I'm gonna have to take a pretty well-timed engagement, or very likely I'm just gonna get blasted. What's this? Someone commented Bretonia and Bretonia. All right. There you go. Bretonia. All right. So it's supposed to be Bretonia? Anyways, look, I'm just a simple Canadian that knows no French. I'll call him whatever I want to call him, or whatever I arrive at. You think you've seen Turin casting this one? Yeah, it's pretty good. Though this time it's from the first-person perspective. Pretty fun. But yeah, actually, he might have cast from his first-person perspective too. But yeah, this one's pretty great. Pretty good game. Bretonian. Oh, well, okay, yeah, that's like individual. Anyways, for the actual battle itself, it's gonna be a lot of cavalry maneuvering. You can see I've positioned in the middle, and that's sort of to get nice, just center board control. That can be quite good whenever you're playing domination, as it does mean your opponent is sort of focused onto one area, and if you're capturing 2 points, you should be able to dictate how fights actually play out. In this case, I'm forcing Turin to progress forwards onto my point number 1, and I'm going to be moving my cavalry into the middle. The idea is that I don't really want them to be defending the far point. If he decides not to summon there, that would be very bad for me, as I'll just be down a couple of units of cavalry. So very important to make sure that they're always active and looking for a fight, essentially. Is Lotharian viable at all? Technically viable, but I wouldn't say meta. And to see what's the first person peasant view. Where's the first person peasant view? I see. Well, you might actually see that tomorrow. I do have a video about peasants coming out tomorrow, which should be very fun. Now, for the actual fighting itself, you'll notice Turin did summon 2 snow leopards. I was pretty happy about this, because generally snow leopards are quite weak. You also notice I have Shield of Thorns, a recently upgraded ability, or more changed ability, and the engagement begins. So, sort of my plan here was to send the peasants in first to sort of block for my knights, hopefully draw a little bit of attention, and then send in the knights to do some cleanup. For the flank side, you'll notice that he does get a pretty nasty Tempest on my cavalry, and that's going to be a really nice bait with the snow leopards and war sleds over there. Thankfully, there was at least a little bit of a split on my cavalry, but taking out 2 is devastating for me. A cavalry flank on the side too means that my peasants are definitely going to be dying, but if you take a look at the value trading, it's not too bad. It's fairly even. Of course, I have healing, which is to my advantage, but much more importantly, I've engaged onto his ranged units, ranged units, which is a very good sign for me because generally that means I'll start to trade up. So while I was a little bit worried here, I was feeling okay as long as those guys were getting shut down. Of course, the chariots are still definitely a menace, and I'll have to shut them down too. And overall, you'll notice that I'm not summoning in a lot of infantry. I've been favoring cavalry instead, simply because they can make it to the front line a bit faster and actually have more of a immediate effect than my infantry. Will Bretonian cavalry formations be worth it? Honestly, I need to test that again. You know what? Let me write that down. Cav formation. Yeah, I haven't actually done a deep dive on that. I'm a little bit surprised at myself that I haven't. Considering my channel is all about testing out these super niche things, yeah, I really should have. But yeah, for this engagement over here, you can notice that double snow leopard dive on my caster over there. Yes, we are playing against Durin. Man, everybody's gonna ask this every time. He's got to change his account name to Durin, I swear. But yeah, Fane Chantress losing her full-on magic resist is actually going to be a lot more susceptible to snow leopards than one might expect. So I'm just being super duper careful with her, making sure that she's staying close to her paladins, as they will act as supreme bodyguards for her. Miss Medi on Twitch saying, don't Bretonian Cav actually have higher capture weight? Bretonian cavalry have higher capture weight than expendable units, so they're actually equal with infantry now, which actually makes Bretonia a pretty good faction, which is amazing. Yeah, so they can focus a lot heavier on just trading well with cavalry, and that's exactly what I'm doing with this build here. In a previous build, like, those Zargard would have just extremely outcapped my cavalry, and it would have been devastating for me, as well, yeah, you would always trade up with your cavalry, but they would never actually, they wouldn't actually be able to capture the points in time for you to win. And speaking of capturing points, we just got triple capped. Now, thankfully, we did hold 2 capture points early on, which means it's not super duper scary, as I do have a little bit of leeway to capture points, but it's still pretty scary, don't get me wrong. We're on about a 3.5 minute timer to steal a point before turn straight up wins the game. And actually, we should cap a little bit faster, as if we don't, it's gonna be a really big race to capture the other 2 points. So already pretty scary, but I do have a little bit of an advantage here, and that is the value trading lead. If you check over there on the far left side, you can see that we are up almost 1,000 gold in value, which is very, very good. And I do have units progressing towards each and every single point. So potentially, if we cap all 3 of them within the 3-minute mark, it should be fairly good for us. But it's still pretty scary. Kislev have some of the longest holding cavalry in the game, so Turin could just block up his closest capture point for a very long time, stop me from winning there. Yeah, the Zargar too are an absolute menace. For those of you that don't know, and actually something that I recently learned, capture weight is actually based on the number of entities in a unit and not the HP. So you'll notice, because I've sort of been softening up those Zargard on each and every single front, they're actually holding pretty well. On the capture point anyways, you can see they're actually outcapping my 2 units of very healthy infantry, and that's because they have all of their entities and they are not expendable. So that's very, very scary for me. Over on the far point of turn, we're doing a bit better in that I am actually winning the cavalry fight, but I definitely need to get my hero squad on the point, as they will be providing a pretty decent amount of weight. Another great thing is that against those Zargard, I can't believe they're outcapping against 3 of my infantry right now, but I do still have 2 more spears coming in, which is very, very good. Blood DLC when? I think about the time Immortal Empires comes out, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, so with the reinforcements, the far point should be getting captured, but the actual timer that I have on me right now is roughly a minute and a few seconds, about 1:20 seconds, and it's a little bit sketchy, especially on the far point. You can see that on point number 3, it is not close at all for being captured, but we do finally manage to secure point number 2. And that's going to slow down his capture rate by about 33%, which is very good. And with the close point being captured by my chaff, I'm feeling at least a little bit more comfortable now, with only the real threat being that far point. And it'll be a little bit scary. Thankfully, I do have a few mobile elements. You can see some very battered knights in the distance. I also have my hero squad and a fresh unit of cavalry cleaning up the Zargard. Still though, I'm not transitioning with them yet, as generally in these sort of very tight victory point circumstances, you want to be capturing 1 point at a time as fast as possible because it slows down your opponent's victory ticket speed, rather than going for all of them at the same time. So I sort of move my Enchantress to make sure I capture that a little bit faster, but I'll be moving my Paladins across since it was already pretty close to capturing anyways. The infantry are now transitioning to Terran's close point, and the reason for that is because I suspect he's going to go for that with all of my cavalry transitioning to point number 3. This is a very common strategy that you'll see Turin do, where he'll be on 1 point left, but while you struggle to capture it, he just steals another point from you. So having all of that infantry transitioning should keep me fairly safe from there, but the timer is on. I have about a little bit over a minute, like a minute 20 seconds to capture point number 3, which is not a lot of time considering capture rates are slower. But because of the buffs to cavalry, it should be a little bit more safe for me here. You can see it's capturing decently fast here, though not amazingly so. And I'm just sort of trying to ward off as much as I can, especially that pesky lord of his that moved on to the point to try and slow me down. And I want to keep all my units there to hold that as long as possible. But there you go. The Turin strategy, Turin patented strategy. He sends in a ton of units to try and steal the other point. He also has a unit of Streltsy. Thankfully, they won't be fast enough to really get onto the point in time. And now, basically, I'm pretty safe. I have the triple cap, and all I have to do is hold out on point number 1. Thankfully, we do have a triple cap though, and in about 2 minutes, I should be safe. Though it's a pretty close battle. Hello, Dynamo on Twitch. Enticity, first time catching you live. Amazing. What do you think about Norska in Immortal Empire so far? Well, we actually saw them in a previous game. I feel like their roster doesn't really have a lot of hard, sticky infantry to be super great, but I think they'll be okay. They'll be like a very okay faction, though nothing amazing. As for the close point of turn, you can see it is actually starting to capture now, and I actually sent my units off of the Zargard there just to get a little bit more weight over there. A lot of my units are chaff on the point, and they don't really hold very well. And number 2, they also don't really capture very well either. They have a much smaller capture weight, and it's gonna be a little bit scary here. We're actually getting out-capped ever so slightly, so all hands on deck. Each and every single one of my cavalry units are moving on, and even though I do have Zargard on the far point, I'm not that worried about them capturing, since I believe I have an infantry unit that I sent over there. Though at this point, it's very close to the point of no return, as you can see by the victory tickets. If I can just hold on to 2 points now, I should be able to win it, as long as this capture is fairly slow. But even then, because of the value trading, I do manage to just swamp it with a million units, and that's actually going to be bringing the capture weight back for me. So, pretty nice victory, though we were about 20 seconds away from defeat. Had I captured the first point 20 seconds slower when we did get triple capped, it definitely would have been a loss. But it was just barely close enough. And actually, I think Bretonia might be pretty good on this patch, especially on wide and open maps like this, because they can play to their strengths, going all in on cavalry. It's a much better situation for them now. And it is going to be the win. For those of you tuning in just now, that was a game against Turin, and I believe it's on his channel too. So if you want to see his perspective, feel free to hop over to his channel after the stream. What's the cheapest non-expendable unit for Bretonia? It's the Battle Pilgrims at 600 gold. Pretty steep price, but then again, Korn also has like what? The price of his units is like 850 for the cheapest infantry unit. It's brutal. Now, for this battle, it's going to be a pretty fun one. We do have a Silostra Diarfa, and she's going to be coming in with some pretty nice abilities. Specifically, the, Kraken's Pull. Oh man, the Kraken's Pull, a legendary spell, as it is what made me essentially, as it was it's a spell that I believe got me my first win ever against Falcon. No, this was a bit later. I think, but it did get me a win versus Falcon. So absolutely amazing spell. It's basically just just a crazy vortex that lasts forever, and it just annihilates infantry when you overcast it. As you can see, for Turin's army, he's bought a pretty standard just melee infantry with range support. Sorry, I'm melting right now, and this is pretty typical. It's very much inspired by the usual dwarf styles that you see. Oh, there we go, there's the fan. So it's very much inspired by the typical dwarf style, and I'm just sort of trying to shoot it down with artillery. Cannons, of course, are very good at killing enemy cannons, which is important for keeping my army safe, but it's a little bit... Oh yeah, the radioactive Moringles, it's fine. But yeah, it's a little bit sketchy since the... Oh, what was my train of thought? It's a little bit sketchy because generally the cannons don't really do that much damage to non-large targets. So obviously against the Sky Lantern, very good choice. But after the Sky Lantern is down, after the Crane Gunners are down, they really only have the cavalry left to fire at. So we'll sort of see how that plays out. As for my general style here, I have a ton of dogs, and I would love to use them to collapse in on the back line of his units, along with a decent amount of Sirens too. They've been reworked in Warhammer 3, all ethereal units actually, to better resist magic damage spells. So they actually have higher HP and less physical resist. Though of course they still take a pretty insane amount of damage from stuff like Dragon's Breath, going down to almost half HP. I don't have any healing on them either, and the Krakens pull a little bit of a whiff. Turin, on point with his dodging, actually gets out of there with his ranged infantry, and even though it stops him from firing for a while, they're still gonna be alive and a little bit of a menace here. The dogs capturing a little bit is great, but in general, since Turin actually does have cavalry here, it's a little bit sketchy, and they actually do land a charge on my dogs due to a lapse in micro. So I'll say, even though we're trading up in value, things are a little bit sketchy, especially with those Jade Warriors barreling down on me. Though, of course, I do have some Sirens and Handgunners that should be able to trade well into them. Still, though, pretty scary. I'm a little bit bogged down there. Thankfully, the Moringles are cleaning up the archers, and the cannons are still doing pretty good damage, although they haven't killed the Sky Lantern yet. What's really painful, though, are those Dragon Breaths, taking my poor Sirens down to basically no HP, and that's going to be a little bit of a problem here, as I don't really have that much strong infantry. It's going to be a little bit scary. Dwarves should have a unit on rollerblades. I think they have a war machine that is essentially spiked rollerblades, as seen on Blood Bowl. Honestly, if they just add all the Blood Bowl units, that would be amazing. It would mean that we would get that new Blood Bowl Snake Man unit would be pretty hype. I saw Lore Master of Sotek post a video on that. Imagine, you know, there is a suspicious area of the map that just isn't loaded on the Immortal Empires map. Oh man, Creative Assembly really know how to tease people. I swear, if we don't get the entire map fleshed out, like if that is just always covered in fog, that would just be the saddest thing ever. Now for the but anyways, back for the battle. We are trading insanely well right now. Things are going very good, but we're still on 1 point. Essentially, I've traded victory tickets for an earlier lead in value. But if it plays out anything like the Bretonian game, I should be fairly safe, especially with my new Moringles sort of pushing in and really forcing Turin back. It's feeling like I have a pretty secure position now, and actually if you look at his army, it's fairly thin. So essentially all I have to do is just get onto the capture points, which is going to be a lot easier said than done. Of course, Vampire Coasts do have mobile tools like the dogs, but they don't really fare that well against cavalry. And while I do have point number 1 secured, I'm going to have to pull some units over to point number 3 if I actually want to steal it, as just dogs alone aren't really going to cut it. They don't have nearly as much capture weight as they did before, and my Morangles are making the transition. Sadly, though, you can see my Sirens are just getting absolutely battered. And that is going to be helping out Turin a lot here, as if they do all get cleared out, I basically just have 2 units of Morangles at a very far distance away. And yeah, that's just a pretty sketchy situation. You'll also notice in the top right of the screen right now, Turin smelling a little bit of blood in the water, starting to push forwards, and that's a little bit sketchy. Even if I do manage to capture the far point here, if I don't hold on the high ground, it's gonna be a little bit scary. But of course I do have my cannons there and a whole bunch of handgunners, so hopefully it's a little bit of a difficult push for Turin. Yeah, we went pretty hard on the cannon, it's true. In fact, at this point in the battle, generally, they don't really have a lot of targets left. Of course, there are a few units of cavalry, but they're all on the far point. So the cannons don't really have that anything they can get a lot of value on. If they do shoot at the infantry, they are super thin. So generally, the cannonballs only pick off like 4 or 6 entities at a time, which is far too low. It'll take almost the entire rest of their ammunition before they can do it. And sort of sensing that that bottom fight is going a lot worse than I would expect, I start summoning a few Fellbats. Now, of course, Fellbats are not an amazing unit for trading. I'm essentially just summoning them in because I know I have to capture this bottom point as fast as possible. But the Celestial Dragon Guard holding against the Sirens a lot better than I would have expected. It's gonna be pretty bad. As I was really thinking these Sirens would take them out, but with support, it seems like they're just a little bit better. And this is now transitioning from a little bit of a scary situation to a pretty bad situation, as the Morangles have arrived. But Morangles against Celestial Dragon Guard is obviously going to be very bad. I've also summoned in some Fellbats, which are going to be pulling me further back behind on value. And Turin's even gone a little bit more confidence to start pushing on to point number 1. Definitely very scary. A lot of my dogs are down now. And needless to say, I'm feeling very uncomfortable. He's rapidly trading up in value, and I have to make some sort of play to try and come back here. The Morangles, they can probably do decently against the cavalry, but not too well anywhere else. And at this point I decide it's about time I get my my ethereal cavalry summon going. These guys are gonna be great for actual cleanup against the Cathay forces, and this is why I was fairly confident leaving so few forces on the high ground, so I'm pretty sure I can hold that. At least fairly confidently. I've also desummoned my cannons, as they've more or less been useless for the past while, and the cavalry is cleaning up on the high ground. I believe at this point in the battle, now that I'm starting to trade down, my mindset was beginning to shift. I was thinking, basically, this bottom point has been a lost cause. Generally, if you attack a point but don't capture, that's a huge misplay on your part. And I'm sort of cutting my losses and saying, you know what? We're just gonna capture the high ground point. Time is of the essence, and I just need to get this done as soon as possible if I actually want to win this game, as there's no way I'll get the bottom, and I just need to buy more time to trade up. The dogs will be pretty good at cleaning up, and I do have a unit of Sirens, but interestingly enough now, Cathay finally does stand a little bit more of a chance. And it seems like my distraction may very well win me the bottom point, though that's a bit yet to be seen. But yeah, Cathay has a little bit of an easier time defending their points now. You can see it captures way slower. Of course, their infantry is extremely slow, but their cavalry will get there very, very quickly. And for each unit of Cathay cavalry you summon, they should be able to keep the point from getting captured by single units of infantry. And given how expensive my infantry is, it may actually be pretty difficult here. Between my sirens and my scurvy dogs, we're actually not really capturing that quickly. And sort of sensing that I would never really be able to get capture weight there, I concede the game, and Turin takes game number 2, a 50% win rate today. Pretty low yield on the farm, but still, though, we do have a bit of scrappiness left in us. It's going to be Lizardmen against Nurgle next. And yes, indeed, I brought Krokar and Croak again. One of my most favorite combinations in all of Warhammer for this patch. As Croak is just amazing damage, Krokar gets healed by Rev Crystals, so you don't really lose out like you did in Warhammer 2, not having Mazdamundi for healing. Yeah, it should be pretty exciting. It's too zoomed out. Yeah, maybe I'll do some zoom-ins when I'm actually casting replays, but when I'm actually playing the game, zooming out is sort of just it's a necessity for being able to see the battlefield. Yeah, loss farming today? Should I rename the stream? I don't know. Maybe I should. Ant-Man asking Enticity, did they remove the living units on the Vampire Coast roster? They're in their own, like, exclusive category, so they're not playable in multiplayer, sadly. Now, for my build, it's going to be a heavy infantry build, pretty typical for the Lizardmen, of course. Rev Crystal, Krokar, amazing combination. And you can see in my reserves, I've actually bought myself a couple Razordons. They have a little bit of an interesting thing about them, and that's the fact that their shots actually penetrate targets now. I'm pretty sure this is unintended, so don't expect it to stay around for too long, though definitely something to keep an eye on, because it does insane damage. We might see that a little bit later. This is not a live battle, though I am live. Man, people are just going to be asking that all day, aren't they? But here we go. As the battle actually gets underway, you're going to notice Krokar getting deleted off the face of the planet by Death Heads. Turns out Death Heads still one of the strongest range attacks in the game if they're actually landing their shots, but I'm not the most worried. Rev Crystal should actually be able to heal Krokar all the way to full HP, which is insane. But of course, a Great Unclean One is quite scary, and honestly, the only advantage that I have here is the fact that I have a pretty huge amount of capture weight on the point. Loads of Saurus Warriors are great. I have a ton more units coming in to support, and Krokar should be able to clean up a lot of these forces, especially those Plague Toads, who should be getting slowly removed. As for Lord Croak, he's going to be casting a spell on those Exalted Plague Bearers, and I'm hoping to wipe out a few entities just to secure the capture weight on the point. Right now, it's looking red, but that can be a visual glitch, and actually, I think it is. You can tell by the green arrow that we are indeed capturing it. So feeling pretty confident there. And over on the flank side, we're just running around with some skinks looking to see if we can pressure the far point. Though I don't want to take the fight just yet, as we are winning off of 2 points, so I don't want to take a risky engagement. How long have I been back on Twitch? Well, for a while. For like a couple of weeks, yeah. I haven't done a ton of streams, but I'm doing restreams, so we're on Twitch and YouTube. For all the YouTube folk, that was a comment on my Twitch stream. But yeah, pretty exciting. Restreaming is actually pretty fun. The Rev Crystal too, you'll notice I healed my infantry in this case. And the reason we did that is because infantry benefit a lot more from percentile healing. Ola, lose ergo sum. Interesting name. But yeah, I would say things are pretty good though overall, especially because of Croak. If you didn't notice, he is absolutely busted right now, as all of his spells are just obliterating the infantry here. Another one's dropping. Turin tries to dodge it, and he will get a partial dodge, but those Exalted Plague Bearers still take like 25% of their HP damage. And with that, we've properly secured the middle. Of course, it's a Great Unclean One, but we can mostly ignore him simply because he's just a single unit, and we can easily outcapture him with our infantry. Now, our flank point is a little bit exposed, but generally, because we're trading up so well, I'm pretty confident taking fights on multiple ends. Did Stream of Corruption get nerfed? It didn't. But against Lizardmen, I'm saying but really loudly and a lot, but anyways, The Stream of Corruption didn't get nerfed, but it's actually not really that bad. Of course, it's quite strong, but it's you know, it's not that strong. And of course, Nurgle isn't the strongest faction right now either. So I don't really feel like it's too problematic. Though, of course, it probably should get nerfed. Anyways, think about that aside. If we take a look at the far point, you'll notice that one of the main strengths of Lizardmen, you can summon 1 or 2 units of Saurus and 1,000,000 skinks to back them up. Essentially, you have all the fighting power you need, plus just 1,000,000 capture weight. And by stealing that point, it actually allows me to evacuate the middle, where I suspect I was starting to trade down quite a bit. And in general, this will allow me to maintain my lead as long as I can keep trading up. And all I have to do is hold these flank points. However, it's a little bit scary on the left side. As for the right side, things are looking way better as the Saurus are pushing back the Plague Toads. But on the left side, it's pretty close. I only barely managed to stop them with 1 more unit of skinks making it in time. And now it's pretty scary for turn once again. That obelisk sort of blocking my spells, unfortunately. But we do manage to get it down. And it should be able to kill off the rest of those Exalteds. If it does, it very well could slow down the capture weight enough for me to hold it, but no, Turin does actually manage to steal it. And Chris Marler with the 5 USD, thank you very much, saying, are zombies and skeletons expendable? I heard they were not. Why? Zombies are expendable, skeletons are not. They're a little bit more expensive, same price as chameleon skinks, so it sort of makes sense that they're not expendable. Either way, though, they don't really trade super well. So I've been finding Lizardmen actually win pretty well against the vampire counts. And especially if their healing gets nerfed, they really shouldn't be too much of a problem. Tissy, do you know if the Frostheart... Did you know the Frostheart Phoenix never had it? Ah, yes. The glorious clickbait of Falcon. Yo, I gotta copy that format. That was a pretty interesting video. Though I didn't actually watch the video, as I assumed he was just gonna be talking about how Frostheart Phoenix, you know, is weak, because it's a little bit of a meme now. But you know, what can you do really? Maybe I'll watch that video later. Hand of the Gods too, by the way. Still very strong ability, though it didn't actually do that much to the Great Unclean One. My main objective here is just stealing that point, as I do have just 1,000,000 units of infantry, and almost wherever they go, they can easily capture quickly. It's sort of like pseudo vampire counts, except even faster for slightly less combat strength. You mean the Crystal Phoenix? I don't know what that is at all, but sure. Like what, the rainbow one or what? Yeah, Saurus on ultra size is very terrifying. And honestly, Quackar is pretty terrifying too. If you look at him, he's actually going toe to toe with the Great Unclean One with Rev Crystal healing, which is extremely rare. Almost no one in Warhammer 3 in the live build right now can fight a Great Unclean One. So the fact that Quackar is doing it is insane to me. Like even Scarbrand has a very rough time there. So I suspect this could very well become a pretty meta build. As for the Razordons, you can see they take about half HP off Nurglings off a single volley. A little bit busted, I must say. But an interesting thing for the Razordons, because they weren't actually that strong before. So it felt like almost a buff was warranted. But because Salamanders didn't get a buff, it's probably an oversight. I don't know. We'll see. But as it stands right now, Razordons do 1,000,000 damage. They will still die to Furies very easily, though, and that's going to be a bit of a problem here. As for the middle point, the Great Unclean One finally going down. I have about like 10 units of Saurus and Skinkster on the point. They're basically never going to drop that point. And because I can win off a single capture, I'm not worried at all. All I got to do is just keep grinding there for the next minute, and I'll be a-okay. Top 5 domination factions right now, I would say Vampire Counts, Lizardmen, Chaos if they get Nurgle healing, Slanesh, as they're just very high DPS in general. Exalted Demonettes are great, and Nurgle with his new Chaos units. Or at the very least, the Chaos Warrior Great Weapons that we're all getting for free. Armor for Nurgle's gonna be insane. So Nurgle's probably gonna be really good. Vampire Count, Slanesh, Lizardmen, maybe Khorne, maybe some Khorne action, but yeah, I would say those are probably my top tier. Also another Shem's Burning Gaze should do very well, and let's see it. There we go. Takes about half of the remaining HP off of the Great Unclean One. We charge in, and it should die, but unfortunately we are capturing the point, and it looks like the Great Unclean One may live before the end of the battle. Indeed it does, and that's gonna be it. Though, pretty decisive victory for us. You can see that the Lizardmen really dominating on the DPS front allows them to beat these more grindy factions like Nurgle and the Vampire Counts. I would say we probably won't have to worry about those factions as much as long as the Lizardmen are sticking around. Now for this next match, it's gonna be up against Indie Pride. Should be a pretty interesting game. For our build, we've brought with us a Khorne build against the Vampire Counts. He's playing as a pretty fun faction over there, pretty fun sub faction. I did see that on Reddit. Is that the Nagash sub faction? Is that what that is? Because he's not a legendary lord as far as we know, but maybe CA's just trying to tease us. I have no idea. But it would be pretty hype if it was. At least that's what I saw on in the Reddit post. It's Nagash Azar. Oh man, the hype cannot be stopped. There's no way they add the flag of Nagash Azar and we don't get Nagash by the time the Warhammer 3 life cycle is done. No way. No way, but please, we gotta get Chaos Dwarves first. Please, please, please. Now, anyways, for this actual battle, you can see my general idea here. My overall name of the game is DPS. I've bought the Khorne, Blood Letter? No. Herald? Whatever it's called on the motorcycle. This gives me as many melee attack buffs as possible. It's gonna buff the very high DPS of my spawn and my halberds. And of course my Bloodletters and Exalted Bloodletters. And that should help me out quite a bit here. The Flesh Hounds are really good too, since they just annihilate units like Crypt Horrors. In a 2v1 situation, they trade even fairly well against Blood Knights, so I'm pretty happy to have them running around. As for the main army, spawn will basically not die to anything, as they're just really, really tanky. They have very high DPS, and they'll clean up chaff like no tomorrow. But first things first, I need to capture a point, and that's going to allow me to sort of get ready for the first push. You'll notice I'm also pushing out quite aggressively, and that's because I want to start the fighting as soon as possible. I think I'll be trading up very slightly, but not actually enough to easily clear out the entire army if I sort of dilly-dally. So that means we're just charging in as soon as possible and sort of warily keeping my lords safe away from those Blood Knights and just getting the fighting started. Now, of course, I do have the dogs. They're going to be looking for a fight too, and the Bloodletters actually pulled a feint. They progressed towards point number 3, but they decided to move towards the middle since I would rather have them all fighting with my other units, as I don't want them to get hit by cavalry. It's going to help me out quite a bit in this situation. Do multiplayer sub-factions work the same way? I think the volume's a little bit loud here. I'll just turn that down a tiny bit. Do multiplayer sub-factions work the same way where they limit your roster? Or just a color scheme? It's just color scheme now. So in general, I would say it's a bit better than before. I like the fact that you're basically just using an army painter. As for the actual fight right now, we're seeing things are going pretty well for us. Despite the Vampire Counts having some healing, I believe that's an Unholy Lodestone in the back there. My DPS is extremely high, and the sooner you kill units, the sooner their healing will get shut down. And that's sort of the entire idea of the build, as I will now be summoning Bloodletters directly on top of his infantry to hopefully get them to crumbling as soon as possible. But the Blood Knights sort of just getting distracted by my Houndos, and the Motorcycle Lord just sort of just increasing the melee attack on the other flank. So I'm feeling pretty good here. The Bloodletters too get an insane amount of kills with their with basically just fighting zombies and chaff all day. So they should get a pretty nice damage markup too. And overall, we are seeing a little bit of extra lead in terms of value, though it's not a true lead. Of course, the vampire counts do have healing, which sort of offsets that value slightly. But if you just take a look at the battle, it's looking pretty good. All of my units are generally trading up. They haven't taken too much damage yet. And another summon dropping. No, I'm gonna cancel it since those units over there are already crumbling. I don't need to kill them too much faster. How do I feel about the cultist nerf? Does it feel okay? I think it was actually quite good. The cultist nerf is really nice for range builds specifically, and they're still good against melee factions, which I think is about right. By the way, Sword of Corn, amazing ability, as I was intentionally saving up for it so that I could get that little bit of extra damage to push those Graveguard Sternsmen over the edge. Helps me a ton, as that should shut down their healing as soon as they're dead. And it looks like there we go, their last few models are petering out. Very nice for me, and the save summon now going to be helping me kill another unit of Graveguard. So pretty good so far, but remember, I still haven't actually captured all the victory points yet, and value trading is starting to go a little bit in the favor of the vampire counts. A little bit scary. His Dragon Lord actually diving on my Lord for a bit, which could potentially take him out. Of course, he does have healing, which helps me, but he is a little bit squishy on that motorcycle. Easily gets out of position, and the Dragon Lord actually has him down to half HP now. A little bit sketchy. Plus the Blood Knights sort of dancing around will be a little bit of a problem. Thankfully, the spawn should trade decently into them, especially with dog support. But if I don't capture this middle point in time, things are going to be pretty bad overall. Though it is slowly going in my favor, and as more units crumble away, it looks like the capture should be mine. There is a unit of Graveguard summoned, but they don't have too much capture weight. Essentially, they were just taken so that the vampire counts could trade a little bit better here. But it could be their downfall if I manage to capture it. We'll see though, as some Crypt Horrors do get in. I counter by bringing in a unit of Hounds, and that is one of the reasons why Flesh Hounds are so good here. They sort of bring very quick capture weight in response to whatever your opponent is summoning. They're just a really cost-efficient unit that will be there anytime you need them, just like any good boy. And there we go. That's actually going to be the capture. Now, if we take a look at the victory points, for Indie Pride, he needs about 2,200 to win it. If you multiply that by 2, that's 4,400, which is more than the points that I need to get the victory. Okay, that was the worst explanation I ever did, but essentially what I'm saying is that I'll win off 2 capture points. It doesn't matter if he holds a far point, which means all I have to do is hold in the middle now. Trading matters much less in this situation, and I just have to hold. Of course, Sword of Corn is great for that. It's great for trading and holding, and I just have to make sure my point number 1 doesn't fall. Some units did transition, which is a little bit scary, but because it's just a couple zombies and spears, Fleshhounds should trade up pretty good there. They have the physical resist, and the spears don't really have that high DPS, though I do see there is a bit of force pathing, so I respond with an infantry summon. Overall though, I'd say this is not too bad for how sort of vicious the vampire counts are in terms of healing. We've been able to fare pretty well. The Blood Knights with their newfound hunger ability are very scary, but they should finally go down soon. It's pretty close. I'm sending in my Herald to see if I can finish them off. The hunger is insane because it can offset crumbling at times. So if you don't actually have high DPS on them, they will stick around forever. But my Lord finishes them off. As for the skeletons I got through, my 1 unit of Bloodletter should be able to clean them up. And now it just depends on the middle. I just have to hold this for as long as I can, but of course Indie Pride is advantage there with sort of having much closer summons. We'll see how it goes. Lucky dude with the 5 USD. Thank you very much. Then keep up the good work, I will. I've been posting one video a day, every day since the beginning of this month. It's been insane. And yeah, it's been doing really good for the channel too. As for my lord, by the way, you'll notice he got absolutely annihilated. The Blood Dragon Lord actually force pathing his way through to dive in on top of him. And this could potentially be disaster. My lord dies. Well, actually, no, it is a disaster. He totally gets wrecked, and he's out of there. With the Blood Dragon Lord being a little bit of a menace. Some Crypt Horrors are going to be fighting against the Corn Dogs over there. And you'll notice, despite getting a bit of a buff, the Crypt Horrors don't actually trade well into Flesh Hounds. Essentially, Crypt Horrors just move from a okay-ish unit to like a good unit with their buffs. But some of the best units will still do well, and my Corn Dogs are sort of expected to win there. As for the main engagement here, really there's only just one unit of Grave Guard, so I'm feeling pretty confident about that fight. And actually, surprisingly enough, my cultists are giving a lot of pain to that Blood Dragon Lord. He gets brought down to half HP almost instantly to the cultists, and both me and Indie Pride have no idea how this was happening. Like, obviously cultists are quite strong, but the amount of pain that they just dished out there in a few seconds actually looks like it will be killing off that lord. We'll see though. He could escape and get some healing done, but I'm constantly reassigning my attacks on him. And will he go down? It looks like yes. I think he just crumbled away, and that's going to be a huge advantage for me. The leadership of the vampire counts drops immediately, and the point number 2 is very well in the hands of my army. Now, of course, there are a couple of units of dogs being summoned to go on the far point to try and lock that down, but I do have a unit of infantry to counter that, so I'm not too worried there. And over on the far point, I'm even starting to pressure that with a unit of dogs too, so I'm feeling relatively safe here. Of course, if I lose the middle point or the close point number 2 now, that would still be very, very bad. A lot of my forces are very battered, so we're not in the clear just yet. What's this about YouTubers? Oh yeah, a lot of the YouTubers are getting part of the Creative Assembly Partner Program is that you get early access to make videos like this. But yeah, it's a little bit sketchy here. You'll notice that the capture rate is actually fairly even, in that it's going slightly in the favor of Indie Pride, but it's very, very mild. It's barely going up at all, and he'll need at least 2 units on the point if he wants to capture it in any decent amount of time. Though he does have 1 unit of Crypt Horrors and potentially another unit coming nearby soon, I will be able to likely capture point number 3, which should be a very good lead for me. As for the Bloodletters that I put on point 1, you can see I'm considering sending them over to point number 2, and that's just so that I can hold it out much longer. Point number 1, as long as it doesn't actually get captured, it's sort of fine. And since I do have potential dog summons in the future, I think it's sort of fine to get off that. But immediately I change my mind and I turn around. The reason why is because, as you might notice, far point is captured, close point is captured. I'm going to win off of 2 points, so it doesn't matter that Indie Pride finally manages to capture his close point, as now we'll be settling in for a 2 capture victory. Still though, extremely close. Extremely close here. Yeah, it's a very slight change of composition for the vampire count side. Definitely could have won it, but it sort of goes to show that Khorne has at least a little bit of teeth against the vampire counts here, at least in domination. As we saw in my game against Turin that he posted, that was a land battle. Khorne has a much harder time, but since generally, you know, the corpse carts and mortises have a much harder time transitioning between points, I don't think it'll be as common in domination, thankfully. Oh, the vampire counts OP. I would say they're OP, but they're not super duper OP. They're like very strong, but you know, like a few nerfs will probably put them in their place. But there we go, pretty good win. Next up, second game against Indie Pride. It's gonna be Dark Elves against the Slaanesh. I almost called them elves because they're so elvish. Yeah, it's pretty scary. He has Sigvald, but we do have Malice Darkblade. He has been buffed And for those of you that haven't kept up, it's very good. When he transforms, he actually doesn't die now. His regeneration far outpaces the degradation that happens to him when he does transform. So actually can pretty easily do that. But in this game, I didn't really know about that just yet. I'm sort of still getting my sea legs when it comes to Malice. Still though, overall, he's a menace. He basically doesn't die. As for the dragon, I'm mostly just looking for breath attacks against Exalted Demonettes. And I've brought Sisters of Slaughter. An almost fitting choice against the high DPS of Slaanesh. I was sort of wondering if the Dark Elves could play a stronger Slaanesh style than Slaanesh themselves. Of course, they have a lot of really nice cavalry, they have very high DPS infantry, and some pretty cool single entities. So I sort of wanted to try my hand at it. Meme Lord is now Best Lord. Actually, like, not gonna lie, Malice is probably better than Marathian Malekith right now. Especially since Soul Stealer has been nerfed quite heavily on the recent build. It doesn't really do as much damage as it used to. I don't even know if it heals as much as it did either. So it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice just going for like a mega combat lord. Though we'll see how it plays out in this game. Same tactic as before. I'm going for the 1-point capture and then pushing towards the middle. Only difference though this time is that Slaanesh is way faster than the vampire counts, and Indie Pride can pretty easily get that far point secured while I'm sort of mobilizing here. A nice early lead for him, for sure. Yeah, it's really nice to see some sort of the changes and how they're affecting multiplayer. We're seeing a lot of different units and compositions being taken, which is always very exciting. Yeah, really nice to see some Dark Elves for sure. Now for my ability kit, you'll notice Burning Head. It has been buffed recently, as some of you may have seen in one of my recent videos. Should be quite good, and sort of to test the might of Malice Darkblade, which is gonna send him straight into melee. A little bit of a foolhardy action, many would say, but I felt pretty confident here. You know, he has a lot of really nice abilities. But of course, he's competing against Sigvald, one of the most notorious lords in the game, Warhammer 2. He's gonna be a little bit of a menace today, and he's already tearing apart my Sisters of Slaughter. As for my sisters on the left flank, they're now fighting against the infantry, but the first Burning Head of the game commences. It's gonna land squarely on those Exalted Demonettes, some pretty nice value, and hopefully a pretty nice breath attack on those Marauders too. I'm hoping this will get me a nice win in the frontline engagement, but if you look at the value, it's actually pretty even, which is a little bit scary. Although with a collapse down the center, I'm feeling pretty confident about my chances here. As generally, once you start getting some units to rout, you'll be providing leadership debuffs, you'll be flanking enemy units. It's generally a pretty good time. And all I have to really do now is sort of secure my cavalry advantage. As for Malice, he's doing great, tearing apart that cultist. And I'm feeling pretty good now. We're trading slightly up. I just send my cavalry in against his. The Slaanesh's Harvesters, they got a Soul Stealer. We're gonna plop that right down. And we do take pretty heavy damage there, especially against the Harvesters. But in general, trading's going pretty good. Although, if you actually take a look at the value, it's sort of starting to fluctuate between both sides. The Slaanesh's Harvesters getting full surrounded there was pretty rough for me. And this means that, you know, especially since I'm fighting closer to the spawn points of Slaanesh, we could potentially start trading down here. Still though, Malice is quite strong. He's gonna see if he can help out that cavalry fight, just sending him right in. And against Sigvald, I'm gonna take a little bit of a risky play. I'm just gonna send my dragon and manticore on top of him, sort of expecting the tag team to tear him apart. There you go. Dragon's just gonna do some nice cycle charging. I got some infantry. If he does go down, that should be a clean victory. And that's sort of my big play that I want to go for here. As for Indie Pride, we are seeing fairly nice push forward though into my backline, which is going to cause me a lot more problems than I might suspect. As with those units sort of parking in that backline, I have to summon in units to respond. And because they're so elite, they're going to be tearing apart a lot of my faster reinforcements. And actually, this gives Indie Pride a 700 gold lead. And looking at Sigvald, the 3v1, just as he would want it to be, is actually going in his favor. He's an absolute menace. And he barely takes any damage from the Manticore and the Dragon and Malice. The Manticore actually is, the Manticore is apparently nowhere to be seen. Yeah, where is that Manticore? Oh no, the Manticore is actually surrounded on my close point. We're triple capped. And now things are looking really rough. Honestly, probably the biggest misplay was going for Sigvald here. If you take a look, things are going really well, but at the moment I sent my units on top of him, he just started becoming a menace. So I hit the panic button. I transform Malice into Zarkan, or at least let Zarkan take over. And I'm gonna use his abilities to try and pull back in that situation. With the capture rate sort of fluctuating there, that's really bad for me. I send in another unit, very elite cavalry, but they just take so much damage from the magic damage of Slaanesh. And the Dragon too, getting a new one torn out as it goes down to about a quarter HP, only taking 1/4 HP off Sigvald. He's insane. He's actually insane, and it's crazy that Slaanesh actually has access to him now. Probably one of the strongest buffs to Slaanesh, I would say. Just bonkers, man. Look at that. The Dragon is suffering, but look at that. The transformed Malice actually starts dealing damage to Sigvald. You would have never guessed it, guys. Potentially a sign of a comeback here. It turns out Malice, with all of his abilities procced, he actually puts on a pretty good whooping. And it sort of leads me to believe that maybe I should have just transformed Malice earlier and sent him right on top of Sigvald. Because if he's doing this much damage now, it definitely would have been worth it. Like, look at that. Malice is also taking no damage despite also being surrounded and fighting Sigvald. He has tons of abilities proccing. And Sigvald is down to about a little under half HP. At this rate in the game, because we are triple capped, I probably won't be able to kill him. But look at that, another hit takes Sigvald down to 30% HP. And perhaps transforming Malice is going to be the new meta here. Actually being a little bit of a menace here. He's barely taking any damage, dishing out a ton of pain. Another huge AoE ability there to make sure that any units surrounding him feel punished. But alas, it likely won't be enough. Even if we do capture a point at this point in the game, it'll still be a minute before we lose. So it's going to be pretty rough. It's going to be pretty rough. I might be able to capture point number 1 in time, but generally you have about 1 minute to capture, or it takes about a minute to capture a point, 30 seconds if you have a hugely overwhelming advantage. And in this case, we're gonna have to concede. Though I will say, I was very surprised to see how well Malice did when he transformed. Definitely something we'll want to experiment more with in the future, because he was pretty good. He was pretty good. Like, I would almost want to transform him immediately because of just because he does so much damage and he barely dies at all. Like, he might be able to survive the entire duration of a game without dying. But enough speculation. Our next match is gonna be the Wood Elves against the Beastmen. You haven't seen too much of the Wood Elves, and actually we're playing a pretty nasty kite build in true Enticity fashion too. I've forgotten my spellcaster, so we're actually rocking the no magic today against Indie Pride's Beastmen. He's gone ahead and bought Malagor, pretty fun guy, and it's just gonna be a pretty standard Beastmen army. We got some infantry, and interestingly enough, a Cygor, which should be quite good. As for Dark Elves in general, I see some people being pretty sad about Dark Elves. Yeah, I would say Dark Elves generally, they feel like just a worse Slaanesh right now, but I suspect many of the Dark Elf mains will still be pulling out a lot of wins, especially the likes of Zyphos and Ice Power. They'll find something that'll work, trust me. If they have to use Malice, Darkblade, along with some really strong winds of magic, they'll figure out something. Don't worry about it too much. The patch is new. The patch is new. Will the dwarves be played too? I think I have a game against Turin's dwarves. You'll see it possibly later. Eternal God, at pace. How am I getting into these matches so fast? With the power of editing. The power of editing. Yeah, we still can't show off live battles, unfortunately, but soon enough, guys, soon enough. I'm sure it's fairly likely we should be able to show off live footage before before the actual launch of the game, as generally that's sort of what they do usually. Fingers crossed. Now that's going to be a Cygor summon, by the way, right in front of me, and actually sort of different from how you would usually see Way Watchers used. I'm actually going to poke it down with my shots just to try and get it to route early. The reason for this is because I got some shenanigans planned, and that's actually de-summoning my Way Watchers. Because for those of you that do not know, when you de-summon a unit, you get refunded 50% of what their HP remaining is, which means if you use all of the ammo on your Way Watchers, they're gonna have a lot of HP left, and when you de-summon them, you get about 600 gold a pop, plus or minus depending on if my numbers are fully correct or not, and that's pretty good. Though the fact that Indie Pride does have a Cygor in the back lines is a little bit scary. It means that he will actually be killing many Way Watcher models and sort of ruining my plan on that front. So for me, thankfully, I do have some Sylvan Knights that are helping me out, and of course my Lord and some cycle charging of the cavalry clean up a lot of infantry. But I'm playing a very safe playstyle here. I'm not being too aggressive. We do actually have the far point though, so we are forcing Indie Pride to move up, and the first engagement is going to take place. We're seeing the Centaurs moving on forwards. I'll be kiting back and just firing off my volleys into them, doing some pretty good damage in the meantime, though that right flank is pretty scary. The dogs actually getting the charge on my Glade Riders, pretty painful, and even some chariots moving on there too is a little bit scary, though most of my range still aren't engaged, so it's not the worst situation in the world. Any Skaven match with Lore of Stealth? No Lore of Stealth, but yes on the Skaven match. Should be quite exciting. Do you know when people can show campaign? I do not, unfortunately. Hopefully soon though, guys, hopefully soon. As for the Sylvan Knights, they're sort of just rampaging in the back. I know it's generally pretty hard for Beastmen to field easy magic damage to deal with them, and I'm just gonna ignore the Centaurs, as I don't want to get stuck in a committed fight over there. Mostly just distracting while I take a much better fight on the front line, cycle charging in and out with my cavalry, and being pretty happy about that situation, especially since we're trading slightly up and we have 2 capture points. That's exactly where you want to be in any domination match, so I don't really need to make any risky plays by any means. As for my cavalry, we're just pulling them through my spears to dive in onto those Centaurs. I'm counter-charging them instead of bracing, just because... well, no reason in particular. Well, there's a little bit of a reason, right? I didn't expect them to charge my spears, because if they did, then my cavalry would counter-charge them. So to sort of just ensure that I get as much damage as possible, I decided to counter-charge. Though sometimes bracing can be better. As for the general frontline fight, we're doing pretty well, with really the only downside being that the Cygors are really beating up my Way Watchers. We've lost a ton of entities so far, and the Cygor in the back still has half ammunition. He's gonna be basically a pain for the entire battle. We're starting to lose our flank point now, and we're in an interesting situation. I'm only up about 300 gold value, which is enough to push an advantage on the other points, but I need to get a little bit more of a lead, and I have to decide which area to attack. Either I defend point number 3 against a fairly defended group of units, or I just try to push for point number 2 and have Indie Pride get easier summons into the area. And in this case, I'm going to be deciding to attack point number 2, and the reason for that is because since both sides sort of have a lot of Vanguard units, I'm fairly confident that I should be able to reinforce decently fast here, though almost eating my words immediately. His reinforcements do surround my Sylvan Knights and get a lot of damage in. Sylvan Knights trade really badly there, as they got countercharged on both ends, but thankfully I do get a little bit of a countercharge with my own cavalry and my Wild Riders, so it's not an absolutely devastating situation. At this point, my Way Watchers are starting to run out of ammunition too, so we're just going to be de-summoning them, and it's still quite a bit of a scrap. I do still lead on the victory tickets though, so I have a lot of time to take before I get point number 2. A lot of people also, yeah, not having magic is pretty rough. Indeed, I would highly recommend taking magic, but in this situation here, we're seeing sort of a very safe playstyle being done. A lot of people would beeline towards point number 2, trade down, and then immediately get wiped off the map. You definitely do not want to do that in domination, and in this case, by playing much more safely and patiently, we're actually still keeping pace with the Beastmen, trading pretty evenly while I slowly make my way towards the point. I know that I'll be able to capture it in time before I have to triple cap, so it's a pretty nice situation for me. Yeah, strategy in a strategy game, who would have guessed? As for that fight on the flank, my cavalry do finally come out on top, although just barely. It was a huge scrap over there, and we're seeing a bit of a cleanup on the Beastman side. Pretty clean fight on the Beastman side. Why's everyone gotta judge my magic, you guys? Yeah, and with my cavalry too, the cavalry changes really do help a lot against all of these more mobile factions. We do actually manage to steal the point just barely in time from Indie Pride, and this puts me in a bit more of a comfortable position. I can focus almost all of my attention on trading up instead of trying to capture, and this means I will hopefully be able to slowly climb back on the value trading, which I've been falling behind so much on before. As for the far point, or my close point, number 1, it's a little bit scary. He does have a couple units there. Of course, my Eternal Guard should be able to get there in time, and I do summon a unit of Way Watchers, which, a little bit suspiciously, aren't firing. Now, this is, I believe, a bug with the build we have. Hopefully it gets fixed by the time the game launches. I believe Creative Assembly did. They do know that this is a bug, so fingers crossed it gets fixed. But the resummoned Way Watchers are not firing. You can see they haven't used a single volley of ammunition, I think. Yeah, you can see they just basically always have a move command. There's the fire command, but we haven't seen their ammunition go down. And I do end up pulling them away and trying to get them into safety. Yeah, pretty painful bug, because my entire strategy was revolved around the Way Watchers. However, we may still be able to pull through yet. You can see point number 2 is being held fairly well with my Lord and my cavalry, though it is very sketchy there. I tried to desummon my Way Watchers because they're not firing. Oh, actually, I think they did shoot a volley there, so maybe something was just weird. I don't know. I saw they got one volley off, but that was it. Really weird. All right, I have no idea what's going on then. Either way, I tried to desummon them. That's really weird. Were they just... Is it just because units have to reload so they can't fire during the first like 10 seconds of summoning? Maybe that's what's happening. So I would say probably a bad idea to Vanguard summon your Way Watchers then, but I guess it's not a bug. You know, I guess I'm spreading fake news about CA. Apologies to Creative Assembly. I did report it as a bug. And I guess it's not a problem. That's really weird. Why did it take them so long to fire? I have no idea. Was that 10 seconds? I have no idea. Well, there you go. They got one shot off and I desummoned them. Actually pretty bad for me now, because we did lose out on value, but if you take a look at those victory points there, I am 1,000 away from winning. Indie Pride is 2,000 points away from winning, which means if I can hold point number 2 for a little bit longer, I will win it off a single capture, which is very good for me. Though, of course, it's very close. We barely managed to hold point number 2 long enough for that to become a reality. But because I know I don't want to just be in a long grind against Indie Pride on point number 1, I'm rapidly running out of units, and the plan instead is actually going to be trying to stall out point number 2. Now, you might be surprised to see this, because usually I'm the guy that touts sort of a very sort of slow, like, oh yeah, just pool all your units on the other point. Don't take a fight on the point if you're losing it. In this case, it's a bit different, because when you're so low on units, you're really worried about your opponent having a lot of time to take your final point. One capture point will take quite a while to win you the game. It's 300 victory tickets a second, and in this case, 300 victory tickets means we have like a minute and 20 seconds left to hold. Had I taken even a little bit longer, giving up point number 2, that could have been 2 minutes. It could have potentially been 3 minutes, which would have been extremely bad for me. Indie Pride could just pool all of his resources on point number 1, and we'd basically be screwed. So instead, I hold it a bit longer to reduce the time in this final stage of the battle, and now I'm taking very aggressive fights in the middle. Basically a Hail Mary charge to stall him out as long as humanly possible, because that last point has to hold. We have 1 minute to hold it off, slightly less now, and given that we have actually stalled him out pretty good, I'm feeling pretty confident now. 200 victory tickets away, so that's roughly 40 seconds, and... Oh, 300 victory points a second? My bad. A minute. Look, streamer curse, guys. We're always going to be screwing up somewhere. But yes, it's looking pretty good for us. Point number 1, we basically blocked each and every single one of his units from actually touching the point. So even though he has a slightly larger force, they won't actually be able to get there and capture. And actually, we will manage to barely win this game without a caster, with Way Watchers that didn't fire on summoning, and some pretty nice cavalry play, and that's pretty exciting. I'm really happy to see cavalry do a lot better in on this patch. Excuse me. Why didn't he blitz in? I think that was mostly just because of a bit of inexperience with just a little bit of inexperience with the domination format. Because obviously I play domination a lot more than a lot of other content creators. So I'm like constantly looking at the victory tickets. But many times it's easy to miss that you need to be pushing in to seal the point to avoid a loss. And not to mention I just had 1,000,000 units there, so it would have been pretty hard either way. But yeah, GG, that was a very fun game. In this match, it's going to be an interesting Kislev build against the Vampire Counts. Now here's my mad strategy. Vampire Counts are renowned for the healing, but they're relatively low damage. Kislev have an ability on Patriarchs that heals 0.1 per second, 0.1% HP per second, on all units nearby. Which means, if you think about it, you can actually heal cap your Zargard against a mass Graveguard healing build, which is huge for the Vampire Counts, or for Kislev. As if both sides are healing capped and Zargard are just treating better, it's looking pretty good. Now there is a zombie summon on top of my Zargard, followed up by an immediate breath attack. Instantly kills my Zargard. Not exactly the best start, but we'll see how it plays out. It's an interesting strategy. I've had a little bit of success with it, but this time around we're seeing a lot more of a cavalry focused high DPS Vampire Count style. We'll see if this does all right. How does Bretonia do in domination? If you check earlier in the VOD, you'll actually see we had a nice Bretonia game earlier. But yeah, in this situation, it's a little bit scarier. Katarин is getting Spirit Leech spammed. It actually does do fairly nice damage to infantry lords with not a lot of HP. And because we've invested very heavily in the Zargard, Katarin's actually getting dived in on. She's getting absolutely obliterated by that lord there, and this build definitely is not the build against things like dragons and mobility. My Zargard move in, they're much more specialized against Graveguard, and now it's looking pretty bad. It's looking a little bit sketchy based on this sort of current state of events. Yeah, Katarin getting absolutely butchered, and this is basically an all-in build. It's sort of showing itself as it's basically an all-in build that does really badly against all else. Surprisingly enough, it does actually beat a mass infantry build, but here it's sort of just pain and suffering, and we're already down like 1,000, 2,000 points in value. It's basically over at this point. I think we just got... Did we just get raided? Why is there so much... I think the Twitch chat's just reacting to me getting butchered here. And yeah, it's brutal, man. It's absolutely brutal. And this is why Vampire Counts are quite scary. I think we are getting raided. Or maybe it's just Atrical. I think it is just Atrical stream. Well, anyways, I think there's just one person spamming on my Twitch chat. But yeah, as you can see, if you do go all in on a build, you will get punished. You will get punished, and quite hard. We're only 3 minutes, 20 seconds into this game, and it's looking like we basically lost. I'm just gonna concede it here, because it was insane. Yeah, vampire counts are a menace. Even if you do find a build that technically beats them, you gotta be very careful that it's not an all-in style. Gotta be very, very careful. So Samurai Warrior actually taking a pretty solid win there, but we're going to switch sides now, and now I'm gonna be playing as the Tomb Kings against his Cathay. Against his Cathay, yeah. Tomb Kings did get a little bit of a buff. Nahakara Warriors got like +7 bonus versus infantry, which is nice. In this case, we don't have Cetra, so there may or may not be a bit of serving here, as it is going to be Ark in the Black. Now, in general, what's it called? The something of souls in the top area of the UI there. It basically triggers every time we get, it triggers every time we hit thresholds of dead units on our side of the battlefield. And this means that if I spam a lot of Tomb Guard, they will be healing by quite a bit. In fact, in total, they'll be healing 36% of their HP. Now, this doesn't affect constructs, so they'll still be taking just as much damage, but 36% HP on Tomb Guard is pretty good. That's a lot more than what it was in Warhammer 2, actually double, and I'm expecting it to be pretty good here against Cathay, as long as they're actually not crumbling my Tomb Guard. We'll see how that goes. Arid Zephyr, by the way, thank you very much for the 10 USD. Very, very much appreciated, as that does help the channel a ton. Is my, that's weird. I guess I don't have the notification for when people donate. No, it should be there. Weird. Anyways, where was I? We were talking about, yes, Tomb Kings. Yeah, Tomb Kings are really interesting. A lot of the units are cheaper too. Carrion only cost 380, I believe, which is very nice. Arid Zephyr, I just noticed what you typed in as your message. For your funeral expenses, really? Really? Oh my gosh, this is the worst wind farming I've ever done. Actually though, this is literally the most losses I've had in a wind farming stream, but with still positive win rate, I can at least have that to my title. So pretty good. Pretty good. Now, for Cathay cannons, they are relatively tanky, but generally Carrion have been a pretty good counter-artillery tool in the past. Their biggest strength is the fact that they are pseudo-unbreakable, so they'll crumble instead of routing, so they'll generally stay there long enough to kill off the artillery crew. You'll also notice the Scorpions have Vanguard, and Vanguard is a really nice ability to have on the Tomb King side, but over there by the cannons, you do see a Longbow summon to sort of shut down my Carrion, and that might actually keep those guys alive. I'm a little bit worried about those Carrion, and it looks like they are going to be dying over there. However, I do have a double cap, and that means that we will be slowly creeping ahead on the victory tickets. Fate of Buna on the Celestial Dragon Guard too, as I do know they are extremely hard to take out for the Tomb Kings. Very elite high armored infantry with anti-large means that monsters will probably not fare too well against them. So I'm putting a lot more effort into shutting them down, even summoning in some skeletons to block them up, and to hopefully allow me to rout them off with a charge from my Necropolis Knights. They are extremely high armor piercing, crazy tanky, and with a little bit of terror, maybe the Dragon Guard rout off. Looks like they're barely keeping it together, but there we go. They do rout due to those Necropolis Knights, and actually I would say Necropolis Knights as a whole are really nice. Yeah, the Cathay cannons are amazing. Atrical in on Twitch bringing that up. Yeah, probably one of the best sound designed units in Warhammer right now. Amazing unit, though, and actually quite meta too. They're pretty good to bring in domination, and amazing in land battle. Would highly recommend. Of course in campaign too, as our most long range artillery units. Now for the middle, we actually managed to get another, there we go, there's the pop-up. Yeah, we get another capture in the middle too, which is great. And we are actually relatively equally mobile to Cathay here, which is amazing. Sonic Hedgehog with the $3 saying melee Ushopti. Cool. I thought this was win farming. You'd be surprised how well melee Ushopti perform. They're actually pretty good, though I would say Necropolis Knights are probably better. Overall, though, I'm pretty confident here. We're trading down slightly, but Cathay's a really low DPS faction, which means you can sort of, against all low DPS factions, you can pretty easily trade down, but still capture points off of them. So against dwarves, you see this a lot, especially against Cathay, and even as an undead faction, we'll be doing the same. Summoning in some Carrion to block up those Celestial Dragon Guard, and suddenly, Samurai Warrior does not have that many units to actually deal with, with capturing, because essentially all you have to capture is cavalry and infantry. And in this case, he's gone for a very, very heavy infantry build, so it's just suffering. There's really not much you can do. Over on the point number 3, we've won that well enough and blocked that choke point really well with the support of Ark in the Black. That's going to be holding well. Rogue unit of infantry is now blocking up his, and basically any point that he decides to go to is gonna be, it's gonna take like 2 minutes to steal. Just because Cathay is a fairly slow capture rate faction, even with the changes. They're much better on the defensive, since their cavalry moves in to actually hold the points better, but in this case, it's gonna be very rough. Yeah, Tomb Guard are insanely durable. An extra 36% HP off the realm of souls, something of souls, is just huge for them. So they'll just stick around forever. And now we finally have a new Ushopti summit. Just gonna plop that right on top of those cannons to shut them down. They've basically been shut down the entire game, and they're the only high DPS units really for the poor Cathay army here. As for those Ushopti, they will actually be getting on the point and holding up the Dragon Guard fairly well, and hopefully pushing back the Longbow Riders. Do you guys choose the factions prior to the series? Yeah, they're all pre-picked, so it's not a random selection. Most of the time we're doing it off of what the viewers are looking for, so if you want to see a faction, just let me know in the chat. Dragonborn asking on YouTube, asking Enticity, wouldn't the Kemrian War Sphinx be good versus Cathay? It would be. The biggest threat would probably be cannons though, but it's generally fast enough to dodge cannons at long range. I just sort of like Ark in the Black just because of his ability to stop units. Like, he has a summon in pocket right now. He could easily stop that train of infantry, and in that case we actually win it with a very abrupt cut again. So sorry for these abrupt cuts, but we can blame Creative Assembly for it. Why not? There we go. Yeah, there's the win. Please do Ikit Claw. I don't have Ikit Claw, but I do think I have at least one Skaven game. Now this is another match against Indie Pride, playing a land battle. Who would have guessed it? Look at that. It took us about 1.5 hours, but that was my first and one and only zoom in of my entire wind farming stream. I hope you guys got a good look at those Doom Knights, because they're gone. They're gone. There's nothing else to look at now. Back into the stratosphere we go. And it's going to be a pretty interesting battle against Tzeentch. Now, this is sort of what I figured. Think about it, guys. Think about it. Tzeentch, his entire army does fire damage, right? Entire army of fire damage. Now, what if we just take an entire army of fire resist? If you look at the and missile resist too, of course, we got like 30% missile resist on the White Lions. We have like 40% fire damage resist on Imric, plus 15% missile resist on him. He's basically indestructible versus blue fire. And of course we got some Phoenix Guard to boot. We have some Silverin for the anti-magic damage. This is basically the guess what, Tzeentch, you're never gonna have fun again build. It's amazing. Yes, just simply resist the fire. It turns out it was literally that easy to defeat Tzeentch, although we'll see. We'll see. We do have him on the run. The panic sort of setting in. And he's gonna be launching in what seems to be another blue fire. Gonna be launching straight at Imric, and we'll see how much damage it does. Yes, literally 0 damage. That's right. Imric is a beast against Tzeentch. For all of you Imric fans out there, you gotta try it. It's a power trip, I swear. Because I'm so used to my large entities just getting vindictive glared. They get shot every day. These poor dragons can't dodge at all. And finally a tanky dragon. It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh boy, and we got Tzeentch on the run. We're pushing forwards. Let's see how it goes. Now, we got some Furies in the back. Thankfully, Dragon Princes are there to support, and they pull out. Imric is there too, and the front line looks like it'll begin. But Forsaken, not a particularly high armor-piercing unit. I believe my White Lion should trade quite well there, especially the Phoenix Guard. And the really only big threat is the spawn. What's the fire resist on the Dragon Princes? It's like 40%. I don't think it was 70% before, though maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it's still insanely high. They will resist a lot of damage from stuff like blue fire. And sort of, since I feel like the spawn are quite scary, we're just gonna breath attack them. And suddenly there goes half their HP. Now value is actually surprisingly, pretty even right now. One of my spear units in the back does get dived in on. But I'm still pretty confident here. Imric should be a raid boss, and I don't really see too much that can kill him here, outside of a full surround and some cycle charging. So pretty happy to see that. Silverin are sort of just standing their ground. White Lions are chopping apart those Forsaken, and now it's sort of a backline fight here. By the way, the High Sorceress or Sorcerer for the High Elves, whatever she's called, they have an item that gives them like 20, like it gives them like 30 or 40 winds of magic now. It's crazy. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So you basically have infinite winds of magic on this build. Quite good overall. Phoenix Guard in the distance, doing great against the enemy. And as long as I can keep my Dragon Princes healed up, I'm feeling pretty safe. Though the front line is actually, surprisingly enough, starting to collapse. Some of my lower tier infantry have already routed off. And it's pretty even, though we are up about 700 gold value. So not in too much danger, I would say, especially since we do have healing, which actually inflates that a little bit more. But a nasty blue fire from Tzeentch. He doesn't care about my missile resist. He's gonna be routing off my White Lions like no tomorrow, which is very, very painful. But we do still have a lot of silver in where that's from, and healing is way more effective against units like Phoenix Guard now. A huge breath attack too from Imric melts that front line of infantry, and with each infantry unit dying, Imric is looking stronger and stronger. He's basically at full HP. We've also completely forgot to use his horn ability, which boosts the melee attack of all my guys. Probably would have been useful earlier, but you know, what can you do? And we'll just sort of keep scrapping it out. Now, the plan here is mostly keeping my Dragon Princes healed up, and the reason I'm doing that is because this is a land battle. And if I don't keep those Dragon Princes alive, the potential for Tzeentch in a land battle is insane. He could constantly recharge his shield, he could spam blue fire at me all day, and without mobility, there's not really much I can do against a kite. So their health and safety is paramount here, while my infantry is sort of a lot less useful. As you can see, I'm not babysitting them nearly as much, and they are suffering a little bit on that side of things. Where's the Flamespire Phoenix to round out the build? I really wanted to, but it was a tiny bit too expensive. I opted for the infantry instead, but it would have been great, man. But there we go. That's more or less all the Forsaken dealt with. I think there's only one unit of spawn still alive. We're gonna finally use the horn, the dragon horn that's been sitting in the back pocket of Imric for the entire battle. And it's gonna buff up our melee stats. So our Phoenix Guard are doing great. Imric is now starting to hunt the Chaos Knights of Tzeentch. Will debuff them with his hunting ability and now take a pretty interesting fight. The Dragon Princes against Chaos Knights of Tzeentch. The Dragon Princes are really beat up, and Tzeentch actually throws a net down on Imric. That's gonna hurt him quite a bit there. And he's just gonna be stuck in the air in a second if he does actually take off. Meanwhile, the Phoenix Guard actually routed off, and my very important mobility is now down. Imric taking off into the sky, by the way. He's gonna be... Samurai was spectating, by the way. But yeah, Imric gonna be taking another blue fire. Takes absolutely no damage. And there we go. A huge charge onto those Chaos Knights. Gonna be doing a lot of damage. But unfortunately, despite how well the trading overall went, we still lost our ever so important Dragon Princes. Now, remember, we do have Imric. And he's pretty great. He's pretty great. And honestly, you could probably solo this entire army. But I gotta pretend there's at least some stakes going on here. And we'll just assume that the Chaos Knights of Tzeentch on a full surround will kill him or something. I don't know. I don't know. Now, this is really well in my favor here. Imric is a raid boss against Tzeentch. There's no way. There's no way Tzeentch will ever kill him. It's so one-sided. It's hilarious. Oh my gosh. It's great. Now, of course, once the actual DLC comes out, Tzeentch will actually have proper halberds, and that changes everything. But right now, we'll do a bit of Tzeentch abuse. Just a tiny bit of Tzeentch abuse. Also, by the way, the new DLC units being announced, amazing. I'm so excited for that. It changes up so much. But yeah, time for the final engagement here. Imric's going to be moving on in. We're going to get a bit more Winds of Magic here. Blue Fire, of course, tickling him. Actually, mostly missing. It was targeted at his infantry instead. And the final breath attack lands, taking off only a quarter HP off those Chaos Knights. A little bit less than I would have thought, though still quite devastating. And he's gonna land right in that blob there to take out those Forsaken. It should be a terror rout all around, as of course it is a big dragon in there. And there we go. There we go, a huge rout. And looking like a pretty clean victory. Though, of course, we still have Kairos, and we're going to have to do some hunting to take him out. And Cape Fury, thank you for the 2 NZD. Saying, hey, Chief, love the content. How to balance vampire counts. Mostly take off their healing. Honestly, a lot of factions will still trade up into them, especially the high DPS ones. If you make a lot more of their units expendable tier, sort of like their skeletons, that will also make it easier for to capture against them, and then you're more or less fine. I think they're definitely very strong, but with even a couple nerfs, they probably won't be that impressive. I think it's fine.
By your command.
The glory of Imric.
Yeah, the breath attacks in general, I think breath attacks do feel a little bit easier to use. Maybe that's just placebo, but the biggest thing that I found about breath attacks is that ultra scale on ultra scale in general makes breath attacks much weaker, just because they're not hitting every single entity. Now they're sort of hitting like 2/3 of an entity or half of them, so it's much harder to get those really devastating breath attacks, sadly. But in the end, it sort of balances out, I guess. And it's probably a good thing that breath attacks don't just delete units now, so, you know, it's fine. Yeah, Slanesh with a proper anvil. Yeah, I know. They'll finally have units that don't have, you know, 0 armor. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Where are my lizards at? Your lizards were played a lot earlier today. You should check out the VOD. They did really well. Minor spoilers. Falcon in shambles. Is he? I don't know if he's in shambles by any means. I'm sure he's quite happy about the state of affairs right now. Unless you mean just the fact that he's not playing too much. Though he did post a video on the Frostheart Phoenix, which is quite fun. It seems to me now that Martial Mastery disappears at 25%. Yes, yeah, Martial Mastery disappears at 25%. I think Prowess too. So it's pretty good. High Elf's got a fairly significant buff, actually. Though I don't know if they're super meta yet, since the only way they would be meta is if they have very strong frontline infantry, which is sort of yet to be decided. Not enough people are playing High Elves on the pre-release build. Enticity. Oh, is that it? Hey, does that mean... I think that means we can load up... that means we can load up a replay. So let me just do that real quick. Let me just do that. And then we'll be good to go. So I have to be very careful here, because I'm not allowed to show any menus. But if I can just boot up the replay without accidentally breaking any NDAs or something, we should be good. Let's see here, or at the very least the wishes of CA. So I'll boot up a replay, and then I guess we can do a quick vote to see what you guys want. Dragons can't do breath attacks when they're landed, sadly, at least as far as I can tell. But yeah, okay, nice. We're not streaming the menus. Very good. Very good. Okay, so would you guys like to see Lizardmen against Kislev? Would you like to see Skaven versus the Tomb Kings? Or Vampire Coast versus Empire? I should make a poll. 1 second. Let's see here. How do you make a poll? 1 second. I gotta boot up the actual YouTube video to do this. Don't spam your votes in chat just yet. We gotta let's see here. Create poll. So which replay? We got Skaven versus, what'd I say? Skaven versus Tomb Kings, Lizard versus Kislev. Skaven versus Tomb Kings, Lizardmen versus Kislev. Or the mighty Vampire Coast against the Empire. All of these matches are against Turin. If you're on the Twitch side of things, I'm sorry. We're putting the poll up on the YouTube chat to see what the opinions are. What are you guys looking at for? I see some people talking about lizards. Some people interested in some Vampire Coast action. Quite exciting. 50% vote Skaven Tomb Kings. Dang. Dang, is that done? Does that mean the vote's basically already done? Let's see, 100 votes now. 35% Skaven Tomb Kings. Alright, alright. Alright, well, we'll let it run a little bit longer if this keeps switching out of the favor of Skaven Tomb Kings, but it seems like it's stabilizing. It looks like it's a Skaven Tomb Kings match up against Turin. We haven't seen that much Skaven today, so it should be pretty interesting. Here we go. Here we go. So we're just going to load into the game. I can remove the screen. And then we should be good to go. And here we go. Any moment now. Lord Croak will remember your disobedience. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he'll kick my door down. I'm ready to accept my fate. All right, here we go. Here's the match. Man, this feels so risky because I'm not used to actually streaming this. Look at this. It's live. It's actually live. It's a live replay though, which is a bit sad, but you know, what can you do? Here we go. So guess what? We're playing as the forces of Skaven. We have the good old Throt the Unclean. For all of you guys that wanted zoom-ins, congratulations. Clan Rats, behold. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Oh, clipping under the terrain, amazing. Yes, we got some Clan Rats over here on the side of the Skaven. You can see some Jezzails in the distance. And for the forces of Turin, he has the imperishable, the undefeated. He doesn't serve. He's coming down, I don't know, from the south. I don't know how to do these sort of, King of Kings. Yeah, there you go. I don't know how to do title reads like actual, what's it, like, not, what's it, like MMA? No, not MMA. Jeez, I can't think today. Anyways, whatever. It's Cetra, hiding behind this little rock over here away from my Jezzails, because he fears for his life. He doesn't have that much healing. Though there are some carrion, which should be quite scary against me. WWE? Yeah, there you go. Man, one day I'll learn how to put these jokes together, but he also has Nahakara Warriors. For those of you that are huge fans on the side of Tomb Kings, they did get a pretty hefty bonus versus infantry increase of +7. We got the Screaming Skull catapults laying right into my Clan Rats. Huge damage as always. And over here, I got Throt and my Plague Priest moving on to contest point number 3. The goal for today is to try to use the mobility of the Skaven to use to get a good advantage, to hopefully be able to pull apart the Tomb Kings, because generally I regard them as a fairly slow faction. You'll also notice some rogue Death Runners here to support my Poison Wind Mortars. Gonna charge right onto those Carrion plus Throt. It's gonna be a lot of damage there, and already a pretty nice trade for me, though. In replays, we don't get damage values yet. Development in progress. Creative Assembly, please give us more data. I do love me some data, and the Poison Wind Mortars are firing. Let's see how much damage they do. And on impact, we're seeing the Tomb Guard. There we go. About a quarter of their HP is gone. The explosions on the Poison Wind Mortars actually do quite a bit of damage. It can do sometimes more than the poison wind effect itself, and that actually makes them quite strong. Why did I choose Throt? Specifically to hunt down large targets like Cetra and Tomb Scorpions. He's quite fast, and on this map I sort of wanted more mobility. But here we go, another volley of Poison Wind gonna be landing right on in. Pretty good damage, not as good as the last time, and the Sepulchral Stalkers are gonna be a little bit scary here. I pull away Throt. These guys, they don't have fire damage, but they do have pretty nice armor piercing and poison. Definitely don't want to get a volley from them, and Throt's gonna have to be a little bit careful. Did Gorich get any buffs? Not that I could tell, sadly. Now, Throt, sort of sensing the danger, we're going to summon in some Rat Ogres. A little bit of a delay and a charge on the Stalkers, which allows us to get a clean fight against Cetra. But he's no pushover. Cetra is quite scary. In fact, he even routes off my Clan Rats with the Desert Storm spell. And Throt takes a little bit of damage, so the trading is fairly even. Over here on the far side, we're seeing I am getting absolutely bullied. Carrion, endless waves of Carrion are shutting down my Jezzails, and the Tomb Guard and Nehakar warriors are far too much for my Clan Rats to deal with, so I actually abandoned the point, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to capture this point soon enough to sort of slow down his victory ticket lead. So far we're doing okay. A little bit of friendly fire from the Poison Wind Mortars though is a little bit scary, though it looks like we are capturing fairly fast. Another summon to shut down these guys, but it's looking pretty sketch. Just a little bit sketchy. If a single unit gets here to support, it's quite scary. And Skeleton Horsemen actually being summoned in. They do come from the Vanguard point, so they are quite fast. But it looks like we will, thankfully, be able to get this point. Jezzail's bullying Cetra. So even though we are down on victory tickets, on the actual value lead side, things are looking decent for us. Though this capture speed is way slower than I would hope for. I believe, let's see, the Clan Rats aren't expendable, right? Yeah, they have Meat Shield. Let's see here. Yeah, no, so they're not expendable, but nevertheless, still not capturing too quickly. The Ushapti summon actually triggering quite fast because we did kill off a lot of infantry here. And this is already a pretty nice lead for Turin. Though, of course, not over just yet. Cetra is extremely beat up, and we do finally capture that point. Much more pressing, though, is sort of this fight over here. And the question is whether or not I can stabilize. Honestly, I feel like taking 4 Warplock Jezzails, a little bit of a bad choice for me here, as they generally become a liability as soon as they run into melee. And in this case, the very aggressive playstyle of Turin is doing pretty well. But I do have some skirmishers here, I have a large amount of infantry, and I expect I'll be able to capture point number 1 fairly quickly. The catapults have unlimited ammunition. It's a bug. It's a bug. It's a known issue. 100% it'll get fixed in by the time the game launches. If it doesn't, like, I would easily bet like $300 on that. Honestly, I'd easily bet like $1,000 on that it will be fixed by the time Immortal Empires actually launches. So it's fine. But yes, right now they do have unlimited ammo. I think Ushapti Greatbow also have unlimited ammo, but this is very likely unintended changes for the Tomb Kings. Don't expect them to just be able to fight forever. But here we go. We are seeing the advantage of Skaven. They are one of the best factions for spamming out infantry, and the Night Runners almost instantly capture point number 1. Quite fast, and a lot still actually about at the same speed that it would in the live build, which is pretty nice. Over here on the far side, unfortunately, like I said, my Jezzails are doing very badly here. The Tomb Guard just sort of poking them away with their swords, but that's going to be more than enough to punish those guys, and it's going to come down to whether or not I can hold these points. Number 1 is good, number 3 is good, but I'm also lagging behind on the tickets. I need a triple cap against Turin here if I want to win it, and I'm barely holding on to a double cap. Thankfully, I do have a good amount of time, and a Rat Ogre summon should be able to do well against me. Yeah, 7-4. Honestly, pretty hard competition today. These the YouTubers of the Warhammer community, they do generally fight pretty well. I would say they are well above what you would usually see on Quick Battle, and actually fairly comparable to many tournament players. I wouldn't cut them any slack for sure. Now, Turin, a menace as always. He does actually capture point number 3. I will be able to trade decently with my Rat Ogres here, especially with the summon, and because I am panicking a little bit, I really need to capture a point. I'm starting to push forwards with my infantry. Look at that, 2 Night Runners and a Death Runner here to try and take this fight. I have Throt and I have infantry moving on in. The back line is finally at least decently secured. But the question is whether or not this will actually hold. Take a look at the Screaming Skull Catapult. Targeted directly onto my blob of infantry here. There's not really much I can do because I need to be on this capture point. But we're even starting to lose it now. Pretty scary, but it's not over yet. We got the quadruple summon in the distance. Screaming Skull Catapult getting dived in on by some normal Clan Rat Night Runners. Gonna help me out a lot. These catapults have been a mess the entire game. And it's looking like possibly we might be able to hold here. If you take a look at this area, we've defeated the Sepulchral Stalkers. We're finally capturing that. Setra is on the run. And all I have to do now, the only thing I have to do now, because it looks like trading is fairly well, is just capture point number 2. Not entirely impossible. I have Throt with still some healing to go. He's fairly healthy on HP. A huge wave of infantry on their way. And generally the larger army across the map. As soon as I capture point 3, I'll be able to rotate many of these units down this path. You can see they've already been given the move command here. And look at that, a little bit over 2 minutes. Just a tiny bit over 2 minutes. Kepler Guard being amazing here as their regeneration fought off 3 units of infantry at the same time while maintaining their HP. Devastating for me as it slows down my capture. And I believe, yes, we do see a summon of Nahakara warriors over here. I'll do a zoom in for you guys. Look at that, they're even healing even though they're at maximum HP. And they're just going to be shambling along to get onto this point. Even if I do capture it, I still have a few minutes before I'll actually be able to win it. Which is pretty sketchy, because if I'm constantly trading down to take this point, the Nahakara warriors will show up and they may very well recapture. We'll see. The timer now on 1.5 minutes. Will we be able to do it? We'll see. I do have a lot of infantry here though, but they are Skaven slaves. A single wolf rat, just because they're fast. This is about this is like 9 capture weight in total. No, actually a bit more. This is 13 capture weight against sort of the, against like what, the 8? The 8 or no, about the 11 of the Tube Kings. Fairly even, but the Rat Ogres actually get in there, and it's looking like I might be able to capture this. 1 minute left, which is enough time to steal a point. We don't know how quickly these guys are gonna get here. Of course, I have summons too, but the cavalry make it onto the point, and the Kepler Guard are moving on in too. And against Skaven slaves, it's not exactly a good fight. Tomb Scorpion actually snipping away at my poor slaves here, and leadership is decent, but starting to drop. It looks like one of the Skaven slaves actually terror out, and that instantly removes their capture weight from the pool. Pretty scary. Setra having full capture weight despite being at very low HP, and actually the Nahakara warriors with their fairly quick speed at 28, actually the same as Cathay, is gonna be holding down the point. And now things are very, very scary here. A tornado popping up. Most of my Skaven slaves are routed. Nahakara horsemen, insanely strong against my poor Skaven slaves. And that's a huge rout. Looks like Turin with the appropriate summons is gonna win it, and that's gonna be it. A very nice win from Turin. And the last game of today. Actually, another loss. Out of all the games, you guys had to choose the loss. 7-5 on a wind farming day. Devastating, devastating. Not having above 50% win rate. I'm a washed up pro. I'm washed up. You know what? Maybe next time we're just gonna do a 100% win rate. Guys, you know what? Maybe I'll finally become unhinged and play only the vampire accounts against the forces of these content creators. Or maybe we'll just keep having fun, much more likely. But there we go. That's gonna be it for today. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, as I know I did. That was indeed the last game. If you want to support the channel, I've recently set up a Patreon. If you want to buy Warhammer 3 on sale, there is a Fanatical link down below. It's actually 21% off. It's a really good deal, guys. Yeah, Fanatical's actually pretty great. They basically have sales all the time. Just make sure the Steam code that they give you matches up with your country, and you'll be good to go. So, something to look into if you want to help out little old Enticity here. Continue doing this full time forever, every day, until the end of time. And I think that's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it. Enjoy, guys. Enjoy. Have a wonderful day. I'll see if I can do another wind farming stream about next week. That should be when I have enough replays. Peace out.